this is serious business. Yeah, and it's not about, what was it? Lando saying he wants to win, and he still believes it's possible to win and be a nice guy. Well, we'll see.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Fast and the Curious. My name is Christian Hugill and this is the Formula One podcast that interviews the biggest names in the sport. Our most recent Formula One driver interview is Kimi Antonelli. That's on our feed and on our YouTube channel if you've missed it. We also preview and debrief Grand Prix, and today we're talking about round 4 of the season in Bahrain in just a moment's time. No Greg James or Betty Glover, but I'm not flying solo, which is good news for you watching or listening because it would be quite boring if I did. I have got someone with me. Now, we've had 4 world champions on this podcast before. Lewis Hamilton was one of our first. Then Mika Hakkinen, a very funny man, legend of the sport, double world champion. Max Verstappen's been on twice. Jenson Button has been on a few times. He was one of the first ever voices on the podcast. So now it's time to welcome our 5th world champion. I'm delighted to say, making their The Fast and the Curious debut, someone we've wanted on the show for a long time, Damon Hill is here. Damon, welcome to The Fast and the Curious.
Hi, Christian. Nice to see you again. And wow, what a long list of very important people. And I'm very pleased you've had me on. I mean, including me in that category. There's some big names in there.
I'm personally delighted to have you on, Damon, because I'm this podcast resident F1 geek. As I mentioned just then, there were 2 other presenters who are both working elsewhere today and send their apologies they can't be there because they're both gutted they can't meet you. But being the sort of resident F1 geek on the podcast, I'm asked an awful lot. How did you get into Formula One? Damon, a big part of it's your fault, and I can show you evidence of this if that's okay.
So yeah, you shouldn't have been influenced by me. Is that what you're saying? It's a mistake. It's my fault.
I'm
happy with it. You're going to sue me.
No, I'm happy with it. I love being a part of the Formula One world. I'm not sure the people having to watch or listen to me do. That's you maybe have to answer to them, but I'm very happy with it. But I want to show you this, Damon. People ask me, what's your first Formula One memory? And then I was scrolling through the internet one day and I saw my first Formula One memory. And it's you, Damon Hill.
It is, yes. Famous wet race in Spa in 98. So when were you born?
Damon, I was born in 1991.
91, okay. A little bit young before the other stuff. Do you remember winning the championship until 96?
Well, I was going to get onto that. For those not watching on YouTube, I just held up a picture frame that is Damon leading his teammate in the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. And to answer Damon's question of whether I remember you winning the championship, the honest answer is no. But what I did, so the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, one of the most chaotic Formula One races in history, a wet race, big crash at the start. Damon, we spoke about this when we paid tribute to the late, great Eddie Jordan the other week, because I think what attracted me to that race in particular was, as well as the chaos, you winning it. Jordan weren't winning Grand Prix, at the time regularly. It was an underdog story and I loved that. But then what I did, Damon, is I then got your book and read about your title win and your battle with your teammate Jacques Villeneuve. And I remember vividly being like, oh, I'm gutted I missed this because I was young at the time. It was probably the first sports book I ever read. And then I was like, I can't miss these things in future. So no, I didn't see it, but I read your account of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm not the same as watching it, but I mean, hopefully I'm quite a good writer and got some of the excitement across. But you would have been 5 when I won the championship, so possibly a little too young to understand what was going on. But
yeah, exactly. Do you forgive me?
But 98 was there was an hour between the first start or crash, I should say, and the restart. So what did you do in the meantime? Because you would have been about 7 years old, probably bored watching cars just not going anywhere.
No, I really do vividly remember it. And I'm not just saying it, but I remember the start attracting my attention and Murray Walker's commentary. And for that, Damon, we have a lot of very new Formula One fans, people who've been watching for a matter of a handful of races on this podcast. So Murray was the legendary commentator there. Anyone who's ever seen clips of older Formula One will have heard his amazing voice. And I remember him saying, "This is terrible," as all the cars crashed at the start. And then in that hour restart, I would have just been sat waiting, sort of cross-legged in front of the telly, waiting for it to get going again. I really do remember it.
Well, I'm gonna shoehorn something in here, Christian, because the good news for you is I've done a film, or there has been a film made about my career and my rise up to winning the world championship. So all the bits you've missed are in that film. You'll be able to watch it. It's called Hill, and it's on Sky Originals, and it's coming out on in about June on Sky Documentaries. So you can gen up and relive all the things you missed.
I will look forward to that, and we will talk about Hill with Damon Hill a little bit later on. We've got plenty to ask you about that. And before we get into it and dive into Bahrain, Damon, I got off the plane from Japan 5 hours ago. So if there's any incompetent presenting from me on this podcast, it's because I'm a little bit sleep deprived. So we need to talk to you about Japan. What a weekend for Max, wasn't it? We knew he was special, but even by his standards, he sort of won it in qualifying, didn't he? That was a pretty special lap.
No, that the track is very narrow, very fast, very difficult to overtake with these modern cars. I don't think it was ever that easy to overtake at Suzuka, maybe at the hairpin, but and chicane is probably the only real places.
It is possible, but hard.
But it's difficult to pass. So getting pole is crucial, but Max just showed what a astonishing driver he is. His talent is superlative, and he maximizes, no pun intended, he really does use that talent, and he drives himself to get it out of himself as well. So a very formidable driver and personality in the sport.
You use the word formidable. You, in order to win a world championship and in order to win Grand Prix in your career, had to beat really formidable opposition. You're up against Jacques Villeneuve in his real prime. You battled him in his first year in the sport when you won your world championship. You battled against Michael Schumacher, of course, doesn't need an introduction. You know what it takes to battle greats like Max. I'm interested. Do you think the McLaren drivers have what it takes? Because Max has sort of proven this weekend, even though clearly the car's not quite as good as the McLaren, that he's not going anywhere in this title battle, is he?
No, he's not going to be forgotten, is he? And of course, they only need a little bit. And we're talking now that this tail end of the regulations, and also the pressure on the teams to come up with a completely new car for next year. They're going to be stretched to get any big leap forwards. Now it's like getting the last drops of water out of a sponge. You can't get any more. They're squeezing as tight as they can to get more time, but the increments you can see are now hundredths of a second. I mean, pole was, what was it, 800ths of a second or something?
Yeah,
it is a fractions of weight, or getting something. A gust of wind could have been a gust of wind. It really is that close. So how you gain another 0.2. If they had 0.2, then Max would be really very difficult to beat. And I think that you look at Yuki's performance and Liam Lawson, it shows that this car is not the easiest car in the world to drive, and it takes someone of Max's ability to be able to make it work. I find it difficult to think anyone else could do what he did on that weekend, and which begs the question: well, without Max and without Adrian Newey, where is Red Bull going?
Yeah, it doesn't strike me that there'd be a lot there without Max or without Adrian.
They'd be down there with Yuki somewhere, or Liam, wouldn't they? That's the implication.
Absolutely.
It's incredible to believe that, but it's...
If Max isn't going to win another title, it feels like it'll need to be a McLaren driver. Do you think either of them have got what it takes to sustain that fight to Max all the way throughout the season?
Yes, I think they're both of a very, very high caliber. So I think they have yet to develop the mettle, in the sense that their battle hardenedness to fight for a championship. It's much harder than anything you've done up till now in your career. Winning a Grand Prix is great, and it's a great threshold to cross over, but to fight for a world championship, it requires you to deprive yourself of every other source of joy in your life, almost. It is literally a total concentration on one thing. If you listen to Nico Rosberg talking about what it took to beat Lewis Hamilton. You know,
Yeah.
he doesn't. He shows the levels to which he had to go to raise his game. And the trouble with Lando is he's in the same team as Oscar, so he's got that to contend with as well as beating Max. And in some ways, Max can sort of divide and conquer. You know, he can kind of run rings around him a little bit, whereas they can be slightly mesmerized or distracted by their own teammate.
You've just spoken about Max in such glowing terms, but Damon, as we both know, everything written on the internet is true. And there are certain parts of the internet that say you don't like Max.
They don't. They don't. The internet is a knee-jerk reaction. There's not enough time to go into. There's not enough space to go into the nuances of what is meant or what is actually said and what is intended. So it's literally a ping pong ball inside a box that is being shaken around by the algorithm, you know. And so I would honestly, it's sensationalism. So everything is grist to the mill for the internet.
Yes.
And so. And in some ways, you have to kind of work with that. Or, I mean, if I want to get a message through, then I will say something that's on the edge of being outrageous, and it will be picked up. But the points I made about Max, I think were completely justifiable, and I totally stand by them in terms of what he's prepared to do on track during a race to maintain his position or recover his position or prevent someone from taking his position.
And for context, David, that's go a bit further than the limit most would go to, right?
I agree. And my argument is, well, if everybody did that to Max, then he would also be complaining about what they're doing. And so, but the problem is no one does it. No one else uses the same exaggerated defensive tactics that he's prepared to use. He's a very, very impressive young man and also racing driver, but there are some things that he does which I think need to be curtailed. And I don't, in some senses, I wish that his team had said to him, because it's a little bit like Michael. You know, even Ross Brawn said that sometimes Michael went too far. You know, but Christian is reluctant to say that. If those tactics work, people will use them. And so, you know, that's where I think the FIA has been weak in the past. The stewarding, I think it has to be a bit more robust. You know, you have to have some limit somewhere. Otherwise, it's a free for all, which brings, I think, the sport down because it just looks like a game of Skittles, you know. It's ridiculous.
And for the record, Damon, I completely agree. Anybody would think there's room for some nuance with these sorts of opinions.
Yeah.
Let's move on and talk about a couple of the rookies, Damon, if that's okay with you. Isaac Hadjar and Kimi Antonelli are two that have very much impressed me in particular so far. How much of those two impressed you in their early journey into Formula One?
Very impressive. I was quite surprised by Isaac Hadjar. I'd seen him in F2, but I hadn't really worked out how to quantify him. But I think what he's done has been incredible. I think it's been very impressive. He's been strong. Yeah, very good. And Kimi, again, there's no question. There's something there, isn't there? There's something there trying to get out, and he needs a bit of time and a bit more experience. He's in the right place, in the right team, I think, for that, and he'll get stronger. But you know, it's easy to forget, you know, the great job that George is doing in there as well with the car. That's probably third best car.
Maybe third, maybe second. You know,
I said third because I sort of don't know how to quantify Ferrari. They're up and down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think underlying that is a quick car. I think underlying, if they can get on top of their ride height issues and plank issues, then they'll then they'll be back.
Well, Bahrain, isn't it, is one of those circuits where, I mean, it's often used for pre-season testing, for example. It is a good place to see where people are quick. So do you think we'll maybe get a little bit more of an idea as to where Ferrari are in Bahrain? And also,
Mm,
Damon, it's not always been a brilliant track for McLaren, has it? So
no.
it could be interesting to see where those three shake out in Bahrain.
Yeah, there's a lot of tyre wear, a lot of tyre deg. There'll be tyre temperature factors, and that was so it was a little bit misleading. We had Australia was quite cool, um, and China wasn't that hot either, was it?
No.
Actually, when people who follow the sport, fans, listen to us talking about tyres, um, maybe it can leave people um, a little bit kind of cold. But the point is, it's the only thing that sticks to the ground. It's the only bit of the car that's everything in that car is designed to make that contact patch be to be as optimum as possible. If you cook your tires too quickly, you're in trouble in Bahrain.
Damon, we mentioned you were coming on at the end of the last episode. Our listeners very much liked that announcement and have sent you some questions. Are you up for tackling some questions from some of our listeners?
Of course, yes. I'm always interested in what they come up with.
They're a good bunch, our listeners. They're a good bunch. They're nice people. We're grateful for them listening. Otherwise, it would just be me and you talking to ourselves, Damon, which there wouldn't be too much point to. I mean, not that I wouldn't very much enjoyed that, of course, but also it wouldn't be as good for plugging the documentary. Anyway, Laura is the first. Laura asks, have Red Bull made the Liam Lawson decision with half an eye on development for 2026, therefore giving Yuki as much time as possible to help work on the new car?
Yeah, that's. I think. I mean, obviously the Honda are actually leaving at the end of this year for Red Bull. The basis, my guessing is that the basis for the powertrain is a lot of it is Honda inspired anyway. So
yes, and maybe they're trying to keep that relationship alive a little bit.
I wouldn't be. I would think it's possible. Yeah.
But I thought Yuki did rather well. He was very good in the practice sessions. And yes, he made a mistake in qualifying that put him lower down. And as we saw, it was a race where everyone was on the same strategy. You can't really overtake, so he wasn't able to make gains. But I thought he was, that said, if we can forgive him a not brilliant qualifying, which plenty of people had that, I thought he looked quite good, Damon. Did you?
Yeah, I think he did okay. I think, it's jumping, changing teams and getting into a race situation. Like you said, that's the most he'd ever done with a Red Bull car was actually during the race. So he's learned a lot from that experience of just completing the race. And so he will, I suspect that Yuki will get stronger and stronger in that team, in that car. But there clearly is a difficulty driving it, which is maybe derived from the fact that it's specifically set up for Max and he's able to cope with extremes.
A good one from Tom, Damon. Tom says, do you ever miss it when you're not taking part in race weekends? It must be hard to step out of the lifestyle when you spend so much time in it. That's a really interesting one because I guess motor racing life is addictive, isn't it? I wonder when you stepped away from racing and into different roles, how much of a challenge you found that, and then again you moved into a different role and you do a lot of punditry and that sort of thing. How has moving away from the racing and moving into a different thing been?
Well, it's a show, and everyone wants to be in the show, but you want to have a part that's of some meaning. You don't want to be just an extra. So driving a car in Formula One is obviously the huge attraction because you know that you're on the big stage and people will see what you get up to. So that's a big buzz, but it's also pressure that comes with the territory. So you're gonna, if you're not going to deliver, you're going to be criticised. So the F1 is sold a little bit as a lifestyle. Yes, you travel the world, go to Australia, go to Japan, go to these places. That is exciting. I mean, working in F1, you get a bit of that, but you're also there to work. So quite a lot of it is, getting to the track, in and out.
Yeah,
of the track.
I can tell you. Yes, it really is. As last weekend proved, Damon, the traffic in Japan, that was a lot of my last few days. Yes,
you have to work very hard to get the recreation side of it.
Yes, you really do. Yes,
it is a glamorous compared to a lot of people's lives. It's very glamorous, and of course, it's great to be involved.
you've been thinking about your life in motorsport a lot, Damon. The reason I asked you that, because as you mentioned at the start, Hill, the documentary is coming out on Sky later this year. I know that not all the details are out there yet, but what can you tell us about it? What can we expect?
Okay, so it's a film that's been made by a company called Silver Entertainment, which is been put together owned by Simon Lazenby, who's your presenter at Sky.
Simon Lazenby, we're aware of his work. A lovely man.
Yeah, and so he also does on when he's not with Sky, he's working on his own production company that makes sports documentaries. So he did one on me, decided to do one on me, and it got bogged down a little bit, and it's taken years and years to get to fruition. But it's been brilliantly put together by an award-winning filmmaker called Alex Holmes, who has identified the story he wanted to tell, and he's used a lot of my home footage, stuff that has never been seen before, of me and Georgie and what it's like growing up with my dad as well. And so it's a pretty mixed bag right up to the time when I win the championship. I won't spoil the ending, but there's a happy ending.
If people don't know you've won the championship, Damon, we can't help them. Sorry, it's sort of out there, isn't it?
Well, some people might not know what happened,
No spoilers, please.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a motor racing film. If you like motor racing, you should watch it. And if you are just interested in people's lives and how they get to where they want to get to, then that's also part of the story. And it's about a family life as well.
I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it very much. As we say, this is our Bahrain Grand Prix preview episode. We should do a little bit of Bahrain previewing, therefore, Damon, while we've got you here. Anything you're particularly looking forward to out of this weekend? Anything you think we should particularly keep an eye on?
I think will be interesting to see whether Red Bull can squeeze a bit more out of that car. I would like to see Yuki get a bit closer. Get in the Q3, something like that would be good. I mean, that would put pressure on everyone else and McLaren as well. Fred Vasseur has come out and said that this is now a qualifying championship, meaning that the difference in the performance between cars during a race is so marginal that it's very difficult to race them.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we had when we had refueling, the cars would go flat out, obviously, to get the grid sorted out, and then they go virtually flat out in the race. So the grid and the race results were very rarely different. You had to come in and stop and refuel, but unless you muck up the pit stop, then it was very unlikely that you were going to catch anyone or get, or change position, because the margin of difference was so small, and the rate of change of performance in the car was limited because they didn't carry a lot of fuel. So they were nearly always racing at their optimum. With Bahrain, they will get a lot of tyre deg, so that's good for racing.
I mean, let's be honest, Suzuka wasn't a classic, but Bahrain is wider. It's much easier for overtaking. As you say, tyre degradation is higher, so you would think there'd be a couple of different strategies thrown in the mix, so we could get some undercutting, some overcutting, someone trying something a little bit different. And McLaren have historically not been brilliant in Bahrain. I feel like if they turn up and are the quickest car, even though there's been talk of Red Bull bringing out upgrades in Imola, that sort of thing, I still think if McLaren go and have a good weekend, Damon, that they'll think, okay, we've got a real chance of, as well as the constructors, which they'll probably be overwhelming favourites for anyway, thinking one of these two could win this championship, one of these two drivers as well. I think it's a good test for McLaren this weekend.
Well, they're always going to have the problem of how they manage their two title contenders.
Could get good fun, that, couldn't it?
Yeah, I will get interesting, because I'm not sure they're totally sure how to approach it yet. They're trying to not upset the balance, and I think that when you're trying not to upset something, you nearly always kind of are on the verge of it getting out of control somewhere, because you can't keep two people who want to be world champion back.
And they're both capable. And even though they're both nice guys and they do get on, you racing drivers are very keen to win, aren't you? I feel like that might spill over at some point.
They are going to have to, at some point, just let go of the reins and go, okay, guys, you're racing. What we don't want to do is give points to any other team. We don't want to give points to to Red Bull or to Ferrari.
It's inevitable they're going to crash at some point, isn't it? I think back to Verstappen and Ricciardo when they were closely matched, they crashed. Hamilton and Rosberg when they were closely matched, they crashed. It's going to happen, isn't it?
It's interesting you should say crash. I wasn't thinking of crashing. I was thinking about simply just their position and how they race together. But, yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. I think you're right. But I just sort of feel that inevitably at some point there'll be a spot. And I'm not trying to be sensationalist and stir it up. I'm honestly not. Because they do get on well. They do really get on well. I do believe they're good guys.
But this is serious business. Yeah. And it's not about, was it Lando saying he wants to win and he still believes it's possible to win and be a nice guy. Well, we'll see. We'll see whether there comes a test for that. What is nice anyway? You're there. Your obligation is to yourself. And I understand that there is an obligation to the team. They've given you that chance. But a racing driver also has a right to his own career, to protecting his own career. He doesn't get to stick around for 25 years. He gets one crack every year. And I think that is sometimes not respected by the teams. They don't understand that, you can't expect someone to forego their own lifetime's ambition.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Because of some longer term. I mean, why would the team care which one wins the Drivers' Championship? Well, if you don't care which one wins, then for certain the drivers care. They want their name on that trophy. So this is why this sport is so fascinating and frustrating and baffling, is that it has two championships that go on simultaneously in the same competition, the drivers and the constructors, and all the money is attached to the constructors. Well, maybe they ought to look at that. Originally, all the money was attached, or everything was attached to the driver, and the driver could say, "Okay, I'm not driving for you anymore. I'm halfway through the season. I'm going to go and drive an Alpha."
Yes,
so
that's true.
Obviously, the teams, there needs to be a balance somewhere where the driver can not be vulnerable to being reprimanded by his team because he does what he thinks is right for his career.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And you said we'll see if a nice guy can win. Damon Hill, you're a lovely man, and you won the championship. So Lando must think it's possible. Lando must think it's possible.
I think I got lucky.
No, I'm not sure about that. We've got to let you go, Damon. Can I push you finally for a podium prediction for Bahrain?
I'm going to go Lando, Oscar, Charles Leclerc.
Ooh, bold. Okay, I'm going to go Lando, Max, Oscar. That suggests you don't think Red Bull will be up there again, Max specifically, that fascinates me. Okay, good. Right, we'll dig into that on the debrief and see who comes out on top. Damon.
Well, I'm going to write that down. I'm writing it down because I'll forget. Anyway,
I forget my own prediction.
LN, Oscar P, and who do I say? Charles.
You said Charles third. Ferrari'd like that.
Okay.
Ferrari'd very much like that. Hill is out later in the year. It'll be on Sky. We will give it another mention when it's out because I'm really excited for that. And I know a lot of our listeners will be too. Damon, thank you. Really appreciate getting your insight. Really great to have you on the Fast and the Curious. As we say, you've been on our hit list for a while, so we're very pleased to have you on. Thank you very much for coming on, Damon. Really appreciate it.
Well, you've hit me well, Christian. Thank you very much indeed for having me in. Thanks for plugging the film.
Hit you well. That's a compliment I've never had before. David, thank you. Right, we will be back on the Fast and the Curious with our Bahrain Grand Prix debrief. I always get preview and debrief mixed up, so it is a debrief. That'll be after the race, as is tradition. It's an evening race UK time, so we'll be back shortly after the race. In the meantime, if you've got any questions for me, for Greg, or for Betty, do get in touch. We are Fast Curious Pod on all the social medias, and I think we're in a position where we can announce it now. We mentioned our last Formula One driver interviewee was Kimi Antonelli, and our next has just been confirmed, joining us very soon on the podcast. Damon, this is a nice one. You'll like this. Ollie Behrman's coming on.
Great, fantastic.
Wonderful.
What a nice lad.
Nice lad.
What a nice lad.
Really nice lad. Lovely lad.
Yeah.
Damon Hill, thank you very much. Thank you to you for watching and listening. We'll be back after the Bahrain Grand Prix. Speak to you then. Bye for now.